So today I'm going to be doing a double book review in this video. The first book is going to be A Simple Favour, and this is by Darcy Bell. And then the second book is one I literally finished late last night, and it's Things a Bright Girl Can Do by Sally Nichols. So very different books, so hopefully one of them sparks your interest, and let's get started. So I'll start with A Simple Favour because I read that one first, and it's basically about a mother called Stephanie who gets quite friendly with this other mother at school. Their kids become very good friends, and Stephanie will often take her child home from school while she's at work. So it's a very sort of normal arrangement. You don't really suspect anything. But then one day, Emily, who is the other mother who drops her kid off, she drops her kid off and never comes back. And that's sort of where the mystery starts, because she's not the type of person that would just up and leave her child. I will read you the back of the book. It says, "It starts with a simple favour, an ordinary kindness mothers do for one another. When her best friend Emily asks Stephanie to pick up her son from school, she happily says yes. Their children are classmates and best friends, and 5-year-olds love being together, just like she and Emily do. As a widow and a stay-at-home blogger mum living in suburban Connecticut, Stephanie was lonely until she met Emily, a glamorous and successful PR executive. The trouble is that Emily doesn't come back. No matter what the police say, Stephanie knows that she would never leave her son. Terrified, she reaches out to her fellow mummy bloggers, and she also reaches out to Emily's husband just to offer her support. What Stephanie hasn't shared are the secrets she has buried in a murky past." So this story really gripped me. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars because it just brought up a lot of things that you didn't expect. The ending was very unpredictable. Like, you know when you get those books when you're sort of reading them along and you can sort of guess the ending? I thought I'd sort of guessed the ending, but then a big twist happens and it's completely different to what you thought. I love those type of books that you feel like you've got it all sussed out, but you haven't. So yeah, it's about Stephanie dealing with the loss of a friend. She doesn't know what's happened to her. She, like it says, she befriends Emily's husband. She lends out support. That sort of turns into slightly more than just some support, and it becomes a very cozy relationship between them and the 2 sons. I really like this book. As it says, Stephanie is a blogger, so you have bits where she's sort of writing her blog post, which I actually really liked. I know when I read through on Goodreads afterwards, it was very controversial. You either sort of liked it or didn't. I quite liked it. I did find it though slightly weird how she was divulging so much information on her blog. She is quite a popular blogger in this world, but I just felt she was maybe sharing too much, and it's not how much I would want to divulge. So that's the only thing I will say about sort of her blog posts. They are very open to people that she doesn't know. So that was the first book that I read. Like I said, it was really, really gripping, and definitely sort of a good holiday read. And then the second book I finished last night, and this is Things a Bright Girl Can Do by Sally Nichols. And I can't remember where I saw this or who reviewed it, but it's set during pre and the start of World War I in London, and it's about the suffragette movement and votes for women. And as you can see by the back. So I will read you the blurb, because this book covers a lot of different things, more than just the war and suffragettes, and I've written a whole bunch of notes so I can talk to you about it, but I did give it 5 out of 5 stars because I flew through it. So it says, 1914, the world stands on the edge of change, but women still have no vote. Evelyn is 17, and though she is rich and clever, she may never be allowed to follow her older brother to university. Life is set out for her, dances, tea parties and marriage. but Evelyn wants freedom and choice, even if it means paying the highest price alongside her fellow suffragettes. And then there's May, who campaigns tirelessly for women's votes and fair pay with other anti-violence suffragists. When she meets Nell, a girl who's grown up in hardship, she sees a kindred spirit. Together and in love, the two girls start to dream of a world where all kinds of women can find their place. But the fight for freedom will challenge Evelyn, May and Nell more than they could ever imagine. As the Great War looms, just how much are they willing to sacrifice? So you've got sort of two sides of the story. You've got Evelyn, who is belongs to quite a wealthy family. She sort of has everything that a girl could sort of hope for in that time, but she wants more, obviously. She wants to follow her brother, go to university. She wants more than just the typical marriage setup and looking after a family. And she has sort of an on-off boyfriend called Teddy, who they've known since they were children, and it's always sort of been known that they would one day get married and have a family. And as much as she's very comfortable with that, she wants more. She wants to go to university and just defy, like, why does she have to have a family and look after kids? Why can't there be more for her? So that's sort of her side of why she's so invested in the suffragette movement. And then you've got May, who again, she comes from probably not as wealthy as Evelyn, but she comes from sort of a good stable family. They're definitely not in poverty at the time, and her mum and her are part of the suffragist movement, which are the peaceful side of things. So if you didn't know, the suffragists were the ones that wanted to do everything very peacefully. They wanted no violence, whereas the suffragettes were all about taking action and breaking property, doing marches, doing the fights, that sort of thing, and, you know, putting bombs in post boxes. So May ends up going to one march, or like, not a march, but like an open talk, and she meets a girl called Nell, and Nell is very much sort of on that poverty line. She has a big family who are very sort of poverty stricken, and obviously Nell is big into the suffragette movement and wanting to take action, and these two sort of opposites attract, and they end up being in a gay relationship. And I loved this book. Let me get some of my notes up so I'm not sort of all over the place. But it shows sort of those three hierarchies at the time, those three sort of wealth areas of being at the top of it, to sort of being comfortable in the middle, and then being right on the poverty line. So like I said, it covers a lot of different issues, not just votes for women. It also talks about, briefly, like the other things that they're trying to get passed at the time in government, so like pensions for people, and all those different acts that were happening at the time. Obviously it's got a gay relationship in it, and I actually really enjoyed reading that. I thought it was really beautifully done. I thought their relationship was very innocent, and because obviously they were quite young, I thought it was just beautiful. Yeah, and I haven't actually read much sort of gay, lesbian storylines, and I thought this was just really well done. It wasn't forced on you, it wasn't like the whole book was centered around it. It was like something that was normal in the storyline, and that's what I really liked about it. So I think I enjoyed this book so much because it reminded me of all the stuff that I did for my GCSEs. It was all about sort of, we did obviously World War I and World War II, and we focused a lot on the suffragettes. So I was recognising the names of like Emily Pankhurst and Emily Davidson and Sylvia Pankhurst, and like I could just remember a lot of those things. But there were some things in this book that I also learnt from this book that I never learnt in my GCSEs. For example, obviously when the war started, the suffragette movement sort of was put to the wayside a little bit, and everyone was sort of had to be focused on the war more, and I didn't realise how much the suffragettes helped other women during that time. because obviously men were being sent off to war, and so an income was being lost. Loads of people were losing their jobs. For example, Nell's mother and Nell herself lost their jobs, and because there was such a stigma of the time of women, they didn't want to employ women to fulfill the men's jobs who had gone off to war, and so they were sort of left without incomes. And the suffragettes helped to set up sort of like a food bank restaurant type thing where they could go and have meals. They opened their own toy factory where women could go and help make and sew these toys, and then they would also provide sort of nursery care for their babies. And that was just a side of it that I didn't know had happened at the time. And it was really interesting to see how, even though the movement itself was sort of halted for a little while, they were still really invested in helping women. So obviously it did talk about the war quite a bit, and about it focused on the men being signed up for war and conscription, and there was lots of different aspects. So you had the men that volunteered, you had the men that felt it was their duty, you had the men that were underage but felt, because everyone else was, that they needed to go out there as well. So you sort of saw all those different aspects of war and how that impacted a family, and how it sort of broke relationships and things like that. And I felt the ending, even though it wasn't sort of quite as I had hoped, it didn't sort of wrap things up all neatly and perfect, it was sort of a realistic ending, and I quite like that. It definitely took you through the war and how the war had affected each person of the story, and I really warmed to all the characters. You saw a large part of all of them. Even Nell, who's not really one of the main characters to start with, you saw a lot of her storyline, a lot of her family, and you ended up warming to her as well. So that's what I thought of the book. I really enjoyed it. It covers so many different topics, not just the suffragettes and the war, but also relationships, and yeah, I just really enjoyed it, and I think it's definitely worth a read. So those were the two books that I read, and I really would encourage you to pick them both up. Hopefully one of them sparks your interest, and yeah, I'll see you in my next video. Bye guys!